Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Carl. How are you doing?
Hey, every once in a while I do a tech check with Grandma Franklin, my 85-year-old mother. Yeah, she told me she took some online advice and changed her password to, and I quote, Goofy, Daffy, Bugs, Mickey, Bullwinkle, Huey, Louie, Dewey, London. I said, what kind of advice was that? She says, they said to make your password contain 8 characters and at least 1 capital.
Works for me.
Hey, welcome back to Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Patrick Hines. Dwayne is away at something.
Undisclosed location.
Yeah, he's working. He's got a real job. Anyway, Patrick, we are going to tackle these shows.
Hundreds of people clicking and ending their listening pleasure.
I know. That's it. I'm out of here. Okay. So we're going to go through these stories. We think between the two of us, we have enough to explain them. So the first one is Adobe users are outraged over vague new policies, AI implications.
So, the worst thing that can happen to a company that's doing AI, or actually most companies that sell software?
Yeah.
Reading their agreements. Because reading them is almost always followed by either misunderstandings of what the hell they're talking about, or worse, understandings of what they're talking about.
Fortunately, some alert people are reading those agreements and those policies when they change, and they're reporting about them. And so I think it started on social media. People just started tweeting that Adobe issued a statement that they've since clarified these things, but their terms of service basically say that we may access your content through both automated and manual methods. Our automated systems may analyze your content in Creative Cloud customer fonts defined in whatever section, using techniques such as machine learning in order to improve our services and software and the user experience. And basically, people are like, does that mean when I create a graphic in Photoshop that you're going to use that to train your image generating stuff? It's like, I think that's what they were concerned with.
Yeah, there's the article from Mashable has a lot of links to Twitter posts and things like that, or X posts, I guess they're called now. And one of them tried to summarize it. I don't know if it was read by a lawyer, but basically their takeaway is they can review it for content moderation. They can manually review it, meaning humans. They can publish it and give it away for free. They can sell it to a third party or sub-license it. They can and will use it to train their AI. And you can't fully opt out even if the files are local, content fill, aware fill, and other non-specified tools.
Wow.
And they recommended cancel Creative Cloud today. Now that's an extreme approach possibly, and maybe it's a reading of taking things too far, and maybe they've amended it, but it's causing a stir.
Yep.
Basically, they're making it sound like they're taking liberties that nobody would want them to take.
Right. Yeah.
That's a problem. It's
a problem. So then they clarified it, I guess, but I'm not so sure how unmuddy it is now.
Yeah, I think they clarified it a little bit, but they didn't just disclaim, as far as I can tell. They didn't disclaim all of the potential downfalls. Right.
They didn't say, we're not going to access your local content. We're not going to do this. They didn't say that.
They said they don't train Firefly generative AI models on customer content. That's what they said. But
right. But
all the other stuff, the sub-licensing and things like that?
Yeah, the sub-licensing, they basically have a non-exclusive license to sell your stuff.
Yeah. Would you use any music software that owned anything that you composed?
Heck no. No way. There's no way.
Right. So it's a problem. And I don't know whether everybody will forget it and it won't be a big deal, or it will.
Maybe they're trying to go bankrupt because their stock has fallen so flat.
Yeah.
And maybe they're in over their head financially that they're just trying to, get rid of all their customers now so they can.
Well, they've changed models without telling anybody, and their customers are the product now.
Yeah.
You pay a small fee and you belong to Adobe. So I don't know. We use it for a few things, but nothing important, logos and stuff like that.
I use it for everything, man. I mean, I don't necessarily generate photos in Photoshop, but I edit all the audio in Audition. I edit all the video in Premiere. I'm firmly planted in the Adobe camp, and I may have to exit stage left.
Yeah.
We'll see.
You may have to take a look at their agreements and see like what is it? What are you really signing up for? Yep. South Park had a horrendous episode, of course, about this, where people were selling themselves to, right. I think it was Apple by just agreeing. And I'm sure there's a lot of this out there, and they figure they'll sneak it in and nobody will read it.
Yeah.
The problem they also have is that I can ask generative AI to review one of these agreements and give me back a summary or any contentious points in seconds. And I think some of that might be happening too.
Yeah, definitely.
AI against AI.
As Apple gets ready to power Siri with ChatGPT, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that should be a good thing. But again, people have to remember the rules of security for using AI, which nobody knows. But the biggest is you don't share secrets and you don't trust what you get back.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to PHP, our favorite language. Programming language, fixes a critical remote code execution flaw impacting all versions for Windows.
So I never did PHP development, but I've had to read some of their code in the past. Yeah. And this is a problem impacting all the way back to version 5.x.
Wow.
That's a long way back. And the problem here, I mean, it's a problem on its face, but the real problem is I bet there's a lot of people who have PHP programs out there and they don't even know who's maintaining them with where the source code is that's current.
Right.
That there's no budget to upgrade these things or to replace them with something newer. That's a problem. People aren't looking at life cycles for these older apps, and they're just like kind of hoping. And when one of these big vulnerabilities comes through where you actually, have to get typically a developer involved, they just can't do anything. So they gotta make some really bad choices and gotta scramble.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all there is to it.
I think so.
Make sure that you update that stuff or get it off your machine, one or the other.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of Windows, recall is still contentious technology for Microsoft Windows customers.
Yeah. So Microsoft's position is, what's the harm?
Right.
And the hacker community position is, yes, please do this.
Right.
And there's, if you go to GitHub, Pennyworth, spelled with a zero, has added a recall module for dumping all users' Microsoft recall DBs and screenshots.
That's databases.
So that if and when a hacker gets access to your machine, they can, easily, quickly catalog all that you've ever done on that machine.
Right.
And basically, own you completely.
Yeah.
I'm in the camp still that this is a feature that I didn't ask for that greatly undermines the security of the system once the system is breached. Now, there's that aura of, well, they have to be on the system in order to do this. And this is going to come back to our clickbait story where, well, first they have to get on the system first, so I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah.
That's going to be famous last words as we're going to see in our last story today.
Yeah, that's right. A hill to die on.
Exactly.
So that, yeah.
There was also something that was posted. We didn't cover it as a separate story, but somebody was posting on X that said, there's a feature like this, just like this in Apple. How is this different? And honestly, I don't know. Maybe the one on Apple is all encrypted. Maybe the one on Apple doesn't have, the screenshot capabilities, and it just keeps a text record and it doesn't capture certain things. I'm not qualified to answer that. I'm going to dig into it later, I think, with Dwayne.
Some people say that this isn't a new thing for Windows either, that there's not AI powered, but there's a way to do this in Windows already. And it's not on by default. And I don't know what it is, but somebody told me that.
I think what you're saying is there's a way with digital forensics to go back through and figure out what somebody did, but it's not.
No, I think there's a way to save stuff, but not to this extent though.
No.
The thing that kills me about this is that, okay, somebody has to get access to your machine who would do that. But with a tool like this, right? somebody can walk up to your machine if you just went to the bathroom at work.
Yeah, they might be able to.
Yeah. And by the time you get back, they probably could stick in a USB thing and suck all your data down. Yeah. If you didn't lock your screen.
So it isn't that. Look, when we're talking about we're talking about vulnerabilities. If you have to be on the system, it greatly reduces the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of a bug.
Right.
But it doesn't reduce it to zero, like, oh, we don't need to worry about it because you have to have access to it. Because there's so many ways to get access to a system. You can get access to a system because they're running a web server on the system because they turned on some feature that needed to be a web server. And now they get in that way. You could be running some other service. You could click on something. So phishing is a great way. We're going to talk about a story about Outlook soon that could probably be a way to get into this kind of thing, where you just have to send somebody an email. It's not trivial. It's not a given, but it's not that far-fetched, especially if you're trying to target somebody to be able to get access, to be able to get onto their system.
Right.
And once you're on, you now have the ability through this feature recall to get everything they've done and potentially get all their passwords, even if their passwords are in a pass-safe, even if their passwords are all secure.
So as we said last week, this isn't a feature that's up and coming in a version of Windows 11 called Copilot Plus PC, which requires specific hardware in order to run. Microsoft has got their logo on a few of these Snapdragon ones that are coming out first very soon, I think. But this is new stuff. So don't worry that,
your existing system doesn't have this problem.
Your existing system doesn't have this problem.
But your future system will.
But every once in a while, just to check, you should go into your Windows search bar and type recall and see what comes up. And if there's an app and it's running and it's on, I would turn that off if I were you. You live this long without it. You can live without it now.
The guy that sells food with red dye number 13, and I don't know if that's a real red dye. I don't know if that's a real thing, is motivated to say, what? This is just a nice color and it tastes great. There's less filling. But when the medical society says, or when the funeral director society says, yeah, you should all eat that.
Yeah.
Then maybe you should take notice of that. The hackers.
Yeah. Who's talking?
I can't find a hacker who will legitimately say that it isn't a vulnerability. All I've seen is people from Microsoft saying, why would you worry about this?
Right. And the hacker community is salivating.
We are. Right. And, I'm looking forward to seeing my first system that I have to go after that has this.
Yeah.
I'll dig into it a lot more then.
Okay, let's move on. One quick story before the break from Bleeping Computer. Exploit for critical Veeam auth bypass available. Patch now.
Yeah, so we're beating this drum, but we have to say this every time. Yep. So Veeam is a system, Veeam Backup Enterprise Manager. It's a web-based platform for backups and replication. Veeam's wonderful. It's very much an enterprise product that allows you to run VMs across locations and back them up. And
the spelling, by the way, is VEEAM.
Yes, Veeam. And it
allows you to back them up.
It's a cool product, but this bypass means that if you've got a system and the hackers get onto the same network, they're basically going to own all the things. And you really want to make sure you don't let the hackers get your backups because one, it's the quickest way for them to get your data. And now you're talking breach. But if they're trying to do a ransomware play, they're going to destroy those backups because they don't want you to be able to restore from backup so that you have to pay the ransom. So backup's a primary target for the ilk of which we speak.
Yeah. Have tapes outside the backup machine.
Offsite. And you have to test. You don't have a backup unless you've recovered it to test that it works.
That's right.
And that's a catch-22 for a lot of people. And I mentioned this in a recent show because a lot of, especially junior network administrators, are afraid to restore a backup because if it doesn't work, they've destroyed the real data. You need a test server. You need basically either a hot spare or a system that you can practice the backup, or you need a backup that you can granularly recover. So you create a file, a test file, you let it get backed up, and then you delete it and you try to recover it. At least test the process.
Right. And this is old news again. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after these very important messages. And we're back. It's Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Patrick Hines. And Dwayne LaFlotte is off somewhere in an undisclosed location doing some real work.
So I'm looking forward to this next story.
Tell me about PQ Shield. And let's start with the headline.
So PQ Shield plugs timing leaks in Kyber/ML Chem, KEM, to improve PQC implementation maturity. So PQC is post-quantum computing. So let me unpack this a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So PQ Shield is a very up-and-coming company you're going to hear a lot more of over the next few years. I would recommend you take a look at them. They are a team of people who are trying to help the world get to a post-quantum cryptography state. So we've said it before, quantum computing is getting to the point where it's within striking distance of rendering all current public-private key encryption vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so post-quantum encryption is meant to get us to a point where the encryption doesn't have that vulnerability. And NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, is about to release, I think in July, they're going to release their findings. And Kyber is one of the implementations, a very important implementation that we're going to see implemented all over the place. Well, somebody determined that there was a timing leak in Kyber, which is weird because it was specifically coded to not have the timing leak. And this article is very good because it will walk you through how you could code the program so that the timing leak, it's basically it's one of those things where we talked about a side channel attack, where you would look at how long it took to answer a question to figure out what it's doing and how it's doing it.
Right.
So they showed a sample of code, which is going to be very boring to those who don't read code, that showed, why using a branching loop would reveal this kind of side channel information. And then they showed how to do it without that control to get the same result with no branch.
Wow.
And the problem they found is that the compiler changed it back to the broken way after it compiled. And it did that because it's faster and it's more efficient. But the problem is it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so this is betrayal by compiler. And this is another whole new layer of headache for most people. And this is why, when we talk to people and like, well, once we solve these security problems we have, won't you guys be out of business? No, we won't. There's always another level. There's always another thing. Right. This one's a little bit scary. I'm hoping AI might solve this, where we could use AI to find the places where the compiled code could have, revealed these kinds of things. But basically there's tricks you can use. But the real lesson here is there's a few lessons. One is, companies like PQ Shield and NIST and those of us that are watching this are trying really hard to make sure that the new FIPS 203 standard, which is what's going to be Kyber, will be safe and it will be as good as RSA. The next factor is, honestly, I didn't even think about this for a long time, that the compiler does change your code, and I haven't seen an example in a long time. We need to think about this. What is the compiler undoing the security fixes? And how long will it be before hackers, and it might be hacker advice, before the hackers start using this to go and look at the assembly code to figure out like what's going on? And some hackers do this. There are some people that work at this level, but not most. With the advent of AI, it gets a lot easier though.
Yeah, scary.
So I thought that was a cool story. It highlights the post-quantum cryptography. I would recommend all hackers to take a look at this. And all programmers too. Okay,
and it's only been a couple minutes, so we have to have another story about Microsoft. Critical Microsoft Outlook zero-click remote code execution flaw executes as email is opened. So you open your email, boom, remote code execution.
So if someone's been waiting for you, if someone's like got you, if you got a technical stalker, I would go patch before. If you think there's a chance you have a technical stalker, go patch before you open another email, because this is a scary one. It only requires you to open the email. It doesn't require you to click on anything or reply to anything or take any action or open an attachment. It's just you open it and it gets rendered in the email system.
Now, this is Outlook for Windows, or is it the online version as well? It's got to be just the Windows version.
It just says Microsoft Outlook vulnerability. I'd have to dig in.
I got to think it's just Windows. And here's a tip, guys. Running a local email application on client on Windows is dumb. I knew it was dumb about 12, 15 years ago. As soon as I could do it on the web, I was there, because you have all of the shared knowledge of security, and you're in a sandbox anyway. Like, there's less chance of these things happening. Now look, Patrick, as soon as I say that, somebody's going to send it to us and say, oh no, this was the online version.
I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm looking right now, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out that it's the online as well, because it's specifically about the way the Outlook handles the processing of the email. And it is still a process. It'd be in a browser. That's your only sandbox.
But in a browser, you don't have all the remote code execution features. You have to have operating system privileges, don't you?
Not necessarily. You can run as the process, and the browser process has...
I can't imagine that. That would be on the browsers, though, and that would be more than a Microsoft Outlook bug. That would be a browser bug.
The reason I believe that it could be there is if you look at Outlook add-ins, they work in the browser. They work in the online version. And Microsoft's gone to great pains to make sure that the online version can do everything. I wouldn't be so surprised. I can't find any reference either way. I've even dug in a couple of levels to see. I don't see anything specific about whether this bug is
all right.
The web version. It just says Microsoft Outlook.
It's out. No, it's on the Windows version. So if you click the Microsoft Outlook link in that story,
yes,
then it brings you to cybersecuritynews.com. And if you go down to flaw details, the vulnerability affects all Microsoft Outlook products that run on the Windows operating system.
Okay.
And that makes sense to me, because it would be a browser issue otherwise, not an Outlook issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's a 9.8 CVSS score.
I wonder what percentage are using this version.
Okay, back to back to my finger wagging. Don't use a mail client on a native app.
Now, as soon as you say that, next week there'll be one that only affects the browser.
I know, but I think it's dumb. Oh, I got to go back to my desk so I can read my email. It sounds so stupid. Let's move on. All right. New phishing toolkit uses PWAs, that's progressive web applications, to steal login credentials.
Okay. So the magic question is, what's a progressive web app?
Well, I can tell you that. A progressive web app is a web page. You go to it with a browser, but most browsers now have a button, whether it's on your phone or on your desktop, a button that shows up that allows you to install the web page, and you install it as an app. If you're on Windows or Mac, it installs as an icon on the desktop. And when you click that, your app comes up in a browser, but there's no browser Chrome. There's no address bar. There's no all that stuff.
So wasn't there one that I think one of the first ones of these that came out was you could run Windows XP?
Maybe, yeah.
In a browser, but it didn't look like a browser.
And the other place, on the phone, it just installs to your start menu. Like it's just a button on your screen.
It looks like an app.
It looks like an app. And
would you compare it to Electron?
No, I don't think so. Okay. Electron is requires a JavaScript heavy framework. It's very bulky. But this is just a real web app. But the secret to PWAs lies in this hook that goes in, and I'm trying to keep it non-technical here. And the hook does things like allows you to manage the cache, the offline cache, allows you to work more like an app in the background. All of these things that can happen in a background in an app, but you're still in a sandbox. So while it's a little closer to an app, it's not a native app. It's a web app with an icon that has some features for offline access and all of those things.
Yeah. But this is similar to like if you installed an app from the App Store it could also be used to steal credentials. It's not really that unique of a it's a phishing tool, but using an app instead of an email.
Yep. Yep.
Beware of clicking anything, knowing the source. So like if I went out looking for a diet tracking program, I should be careful about, I shouldn't just Google and find one that I've never heard of and install it, because that's dangerous across, no matter how it's implemented, whether it's a PWA or not. But this is in that ilk, I think.
So I would encourage people to read this article, even if you don't know what PWAs are. Chances are, if you use like, X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok on your desktop with an icon, there's a chance it might be a PWA.
Mm-hmm. So we're going for the hat trick on Microsoft today, aren't we?
We are. This is bad.
Yeah, I don't like this story. I don't like that this story happened. I'm glad it's out in the public, though.
I am glad it's out in the public. So the story is that Microsoft ignored whistleblower warnings before SolarWinds attack. So
that's horrible.
Bring us back in time to the SolarWinds.
So SolarWinds is an enterprise product that's used for many different things, and that company got hacked, and their source code was infected. And then that allowed the bad actors to infect defense contractors, the U.S. Department of Defense, and a whole bunch of bad stuff happened because of the SolarWinds hack. It was it's probably the poster child for supply chain attacks. Yeah. And supply chain attacks are just so devastating because they get so many others. Now, how would you feel if you found out that years before that happened, a smart employee at Microsoft who had experience with the DoD told them, hey, this is a big problem. You need to fix it. And they said, nah, it's not a problem. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And a long time ago, like we're not talking last year.
No.
It was a long time ago.
From 2014 to 2020 is when this person worked there. And supposedly for several years, they advocated for the fix. And Microsoft came back with, well, it requires, or people in, let me say this correctly. People inside Microsoft are reputed to have said back to him, well, you'd need access to the server in the first place. You'd need to be on the system. So we don't see this as a big threat.
Yeah.
And then when he did start convincing people, at least the story alleges, this is an MSN story, so it's on Microsoft's platform. The MSN story says that people did come along and agreed it's a problem, but they disagreed that it needed to be fixed quickly.
Yeah.
And why would that be, Carl? Why would they agree there's a problem but not want it fixed?
Well, so I was listening to the ProPublica NPR story this morning. I listened to an NPR thing. I listened to a bunch of news things, but NPR is one of them. And I heard this story, and basically they said, the culture at Microsoft is incentivizing their employees to ship software, right?
Yeah.
They get kudos for shipping software. They get, non-kudos when they don't. So they have an incentive to work on that next feature of Azure or the cloud or whatever it is, and not to
fix security,
check out security problems. And therein lies the title of our show today, which is Too Busy Shipping to Lock the Door.
Mm-hmm. So when you and I were, you and I have been heavily involved with Microsoft for many years. We were partners with Microsoft for over 20 years, Microsoft Regional Directors, which is a very confusing title, meant that we were advisors, partners to Microsoft at the very highest levels, but we weren't employees.
Right.
And when Bill Gates turned the ship and said, we're gonna pay attention to security, that was a big deal. That was a big moment. Mm-hmm. But it was a moment caused by the industry saying, some of the largest customers Microsoft had allegedly at that point said, if you don't fix the security leaks here, the security problems, we're going to switch platforms.
Yeah.
So we need these wake-up calls from Microsoft so they can get the religion that this is not, security is a feature that matters. Security is a competitive advantage. And apparently the MSN story talks about trying to compete with rival Okta, which also was hacked last year. Mm-hmm. There was a concern that fixing this problem would make the software, harder to compete with Okta.
Right. And apparently this person said, well, we just looked at all of the stuff that we had to do and it was going to take too long. Like they didn't have the resources. Their resources were towards shipping. Yeah. Isn't that funny? Yeah. I would encourage people to listen to that interview.
Yeah. It sounds interesting.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Not a good look. No es bueno.
No es bueno. But, their stock didn't really take a dive for it. So, not yet, anyway.
No, it's an incremental. So look, the way I see it here is this is another cut in the reputational risk of Microsoft has in my opinion, Microsoft has a reputation of being serious about security for a while, in which they really get their act together, and then slipping over a number of years until the world smacks them in the face and they start to lose. So I'm hoping that we don't have to go through too many more of these stories before Microsoft gets religion on this and says, hey, security needs to be, and you basically go and change their incentives, change their, I forget what they call them, their K somethings.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you know what I mean? The little, how they're evaluated.
Yeah.
But it should be a big minus if there's a security vulnerability like this that you knew about. I'd hope that it would be a career-ending move, but I don't think it is yet.
Well, let's see what they do. I mean, Microsoft is really good about being agile and reacting to things. So I'm hoping that by next week we'll have more good news.
Yeah,
coming out of Redmond. But until then, is Dwayne coming back next week?
I believe so.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right.
So we'll get back the other half of our listeners.
Yeah, exactly. and I'm going to have to.
I think we did okay. It's definitely more fun to have all three of us on, but
I think so.
That can't always be the case.
Yeah. All right. Not as many laughs this week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.